welcome back to this crazy event where a lot of cool people tell you about themselves so that you can learn and have fun while doing it, because these things are fun. Today I have an amazing guest. I have Mr. Dan MILANO here, who's gonna answer some questions and just have a good time talking for the next couple of minutes. So, hi Dan!
Hi! I am so happy that I could be part of your 12 days. This is like the coolest thing ever. I miss you very much. I enjoy talking with you. I love your channel and everything you do, and it's just been a real pleasure to work with you, and also just all that we've been dealing with here in the United States and then also globally. It's been such a ridiculous year. It's meant a lot to me to also have like the outlet and the opportunity to socialize and hang out. So I'm happy to join in and play. Now my stylus is not working, so I'm actually going to be using a mouse interface to mess around on your drawing here.
That's good.
Anyway, thanks for having me.
Thanks for accepting. So, it's the holiday time, or at least it will be once this video come out. So, before we start and get into the educational approach of this video, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So, do you have a special dish or song or like tradition or something that you really love about the holiday that you'd like to share with us?
Oh, that's a great question. When I was a kid, I used to love to watch the Thanksgiving Day parade that they have in New York City here in the U.S. I understand this year they're not having an actual parade. They're just going to have some performances. The thing for me is when I was a kid, I didn't really care about the parade. I just cared about the Muppets, because the Muppets would perform every year, and I loved the Muppets growing up. For a large part of my life and career, I was into puppetry and did a lot of puppet work. And I also used to watch Christmas Eve on Sesame Street, which I think can be found on YouTube. It hasn't been on the air for decades, but it's just this sweet little story about life on Sesame Street during the December holidays. So it was always around like TV and ceremony. But another thing I like is to do a potluck with friends and to all bring something to the table. So it wouldn't just be a time to hang out with family. It would usually be a time to have a party with friends and everybody kind of make a meal together. If not on our Thanksgiving Day, then it was like just in general, just around end of year for everybody to get together and hang out.
Isn't the holiday always about food?
Usually, I mean, when you get people to hang out, it's either going to be, if not a traditional party, a lot of times it was, either everyone sitting around a board game, a television set, or food. And, people that want to hang out together inevitably end up eating together. And I enjoy this time of year, but a long time ago, I tried to kind of want to keep that spirit sort of all year round, because the meaning behind these holidays can often be commercial or some old ideology, or they don't always sync up to what amounts to just like good time with friends and loved ones. So I try to keep that the focus and to try to keep that alive all year, so we're not just waiting for
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the whole having to run for gift and everything about Christmas. That's not so much what I celebrate and what I like. The thing I like is that everybody is on a holiday. Well, most people get at least a couple of time to chill, so that's usually my time where I can meet people.
Yeah, exactly. Things slow down a little bit, which can be very rare in our industry.
Yep.
So you gotta just take those opportunities when you get them. But yeah, I have a lot to be thankful for this year, even though there's a tremendous amount of misfortune, again, globally and in the US. But, our show Glitch Text did finally get to premiere in February, and that was a huge thing. We'd been working on it for so many years. So many people's hard work went into it. So I was just so proud that it was out in the world. I had amazing responses from people. It kind of came and went. in a way, which is also very common for our industry. You know, it's like the first episode aired and there was so much anticipation.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the, if I hesitate to call it the last, but the final one that we had already prepared has aired. And now we're on the other end of that, which is pretty crazy. And my daughter's, you know, about going to be 9 next month. And seeing her grow this year, even during this crazy time, is really special. I'm thankful for that and for her health and for what an amazing person she is. And an amazing artist already.
Oh yeah,
like,
she is. Nice
oh my
animation.
gosh. Yeah, she's doing animations. She puts anchor lines in her work. She puts shading. She does layering. She's like all over Procreate at 9 years old, which is incredible. I would have killed for these kind of tools when I was her age.
Yep.
And she's pretty much obsessed with dragons, which has been a major inspiration, and it's also led me to all kinds of amazing things that I've learned and new job opportunities and stuff. Cool. You know, staying in touch with a child helps you kind of grow up a second time, you know, learn a lot of things about yourself and the world through the kid, and then also discover new and fun things that definitely affect your life. And then in my situation, it's also kind of rubbed off on my career, which is cool.
And that's a question I ask everyone who comes out here, because like, as you say, 2020 has been a weird year for many reasons. Can you share like at least one super cool, amazing, positive thing that occurred during this year?
I got to meet so many people in our community through you, through social media, who've shared their art with us. And I get emotional every time that people would take the time to invest so much in, you know, drawing our characters or drawing themselves with our characters. And the amount of talent in the fandom of all ages is completely overwhelming. I've collected easily over 3,000 individual pieces that I keep in a folder. I have these dreams of curating them, but it's almost impossible. That really kept me going because, you know, it's not just about, oh, we made something and people like it. It's also that, you know, for an action show about video games, it's a very personal story with a lot of really strong themes, and those themes are kind of in spite of some of the division and darkness we've had here in America. So having people connect with the show and with the characters so strongly is not just about a pat on the back for making a fun show, but to show that, like, hell, there's other people in the world who care about these themes, care about these characters, identify with them emotionally, and that's been huge. So, and in a time where we're all locked down and kind of lacking connection with other people, to connect to people literally all over the world in that way kept me going. Because when we're alone and isolated, you can sort of lose touch, not just with other people, but with like humanity, and be left to nothing but news headlines and wonder if you relate to anyone anymore.
Yeah,
so,
it's a crazy time.
Yeah, so it was a huge thing for me. That's something that when I look back at this year, I think about a lot. You know, internally, it's life here at home with my daughter, but at the same time, I think you know, my online life has been one that was really rich, and I'm great. One more reason I'm grateful to this project and the people I worked with is that I could have that.
And speaking of this series, because we've been talking about glitch text for a moment since it got released this year, so massive congratulations to that.
Thank you.
And before it was a show, it was an idea, and you kind of had to pitch it to something or someone. And like, how different was it to pitch Fanboy and Chum Chum than it was to pitch Glitch Tech, for example?
Well, I can speak a lot about this because part of my career is that, you know, I started independently creating short live action like puppet stuff, and that was the way I got into the industry, was producing short films and then eventually longer format live action. and that it wasn't pitched so much as something I was doing on my own with my friends. We put it out there in the world on public access television, which was like the YouTube of its day. And that led me to opportunities where I ended up actually working, professionally for Fox Television. I started writing for features, and in that world, you had to pitch a lot more. You had to go into rooms and sort of convey your ideas.
Yeah, because you're also I think in the roots, you're a writer first.
Yeah, primarily I got into writing because I was always very shy. So I performed with puppets. I love to act, and I'm a bit hyperactive, and I have a tendency to improv and run at the mouth. But I was always more comfortable putting that on a puppet than putting myself in front of a camera. And so the thing I focused on mostly was writing. In college, I wrote short stories and I wrote short films, and I went to a college that had a huge media department, so they actually had screenwriting classes where you wrote both an original script and then a speculative script for like a television show that you wanted to write for. It was just a chance to write in the voice of an existing show, which is something a lot of writers do to get hired. But in all these cases, when I try to give advice, usually I have to assume I'm speaking to people who just are creative as a part of their life, whether they just have the need to draw or to sit in front of their mirror and sing or play with puppets or tell jokes, or whether they need to animate on their iPad or on their desktop or create their own edited videos. Like, I love when people just take clips from their favorite movies and shows and do mashups and make, because that is extremely valuable time in learning to not only use those tools but sort of just convey your own rhythms and ideas. So anyway, that's the stuff that I think most people who love it will never stop doing, no matter what path their career takes them. And those are the people who are going to have the easiest time pitching, because you sort of have to already endear yourself to people by nature of being a creator. And I don't mean a show creator. I just mean somebody who makes things, whether you sculpt or paint or whatever it is. You just have a mind and you have hands that always need to be bringing some form of expression out. Because by doing that puppet project, I didn't have to pitch a show based on it to anyone. It just was something people saw and became interested in and asked me if I wanted to participate in something like it, or if I could do exactly what I was doing for them. In screenwriting, I had already written some scripts that I was able to show people, and in one rare case, I sold an original idea to a film studio, but mostly a lot of places look to your writing to hire you for other projects. So I didn't necessarily have to pitch that I wanted to write on movies. They already got a sense of who I was by what they read. But now we'll finally come to pitching. When I did start pitching, it was usually that you're given an opportunity to write, say, a Marvel movie or something, and then you have to pitch your idea. What would your Marvel movie be? And in those cases, you really just need to kind of follow your passion, like the passion of your idea, and to not forget, though, that this is something it took me a while to really learn. At first, I thought everybody just wanted cool concepts. But you're going to find there are a million cool concepts in the world. What you're really selling is what... oh, and by the way, those concepts will probably get notes and be changed by a million studio people anyway. So they don't really need somebody who's purely an idea machine. They kind of have that coming out their ears. What they need are people who are going to bring a voice, a tone, a sensibility, and that has a lot to do with who you are and the kind of things that you just very naturally love doing. And in my case, it's a bit of, grounded reality meets fantasy, that kind of tonal crossover. It's become a lot about like very emotional, kind of realistic characters, definitely a tone of humor. And things that I bring from my own life. You know, things like living with anxieties, or things where a lot of them were coming of age stories, kids who had to grow up too fast maybe, or who were a little arrested in growing up. That's a theme you see a lot. So I would say, to get back to just answering your question, a good pitch usually is something that just needs to be a good conversation. It shouldn't feel like a big stage show presentation. You have to assume, whether it's true or not, that the person sitting across from you is friendly, and that you just want to sit together and kind of talk about an idea you had, or a feeling you want to convey. And when you do, to try to share it in a way that is as natural as you telling your best friend about a show you saw last night, or a concert you went to, or a painting that you saw. Because you want to convey it in a very human way, and just sort of relate to things that were important to you, because if they're important to you, they may be important to someone else. I used to go in thinking I needed to have all these perfect details, and that everyone would be so impressed with all the detail I had. But that's not the case. The fact is, the details kind of come later. They really just want to know who you are and how you think. And you're not selling your idea, you're kind of selling yourself. And if they like that, you can always set another meeting to talk more about the details. So when you do go in with nothing but all these brilliant ideas that you think are so great, you end up talking so much like I am now, that the people you're talking to just at some point reach critical mass and their eyes glaze over, and they just sort of fall asleep on you with their eyes open, because you just come in and you become a wall of sound. But if you can engage and make it conversational, that is so much better, and it allows you to kind of gauge your audience and if they're interested or not.
And when you were talking earlier, you also said that it's not so much about your idea. Well, it is, but it's not so much about your idea, it's also about you and how you sell the idea.
That's exactly right.
Another good tip I had from a friend. He told me that if you want to know how to pitch, and we agreed on that, if you want to know how to pitch, it's your personality. So one good tip would be to maybe take acting class, or be put in positions where you have to to put your idea across, and that people have to listen. He said go in acting class. I said work in a summer camp for 10 years and you're going to know how to pitch or be listened to.
That is absolutely right. A lot of us who are, people who are creative, you're not always social. You have your social group, but you're not always comfortable in front of a bunch of people, especially people that you're made to feel are judging you, because they literally, to some extent, they have to, right? And we spend a lot of hours in our rooms, our cubicles, in front of our computers, doing what we do and getting better at it. So interacting with these other people in this way is not natural to us. It's outside our comfort zone. But if you look at it that way, that part of the muscle memory you need to build is not just going to be in your arm, it's going to be in your ability to kind of be a little uncomfortable and roll with it. And really anything you do that's interactive is going to be important for that reason. But acting, definitely. I always tell people, take improv classes. They always get really shy and say, well, I'm not an actor. And I'm like, that's why you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Because you're not there trying to get...
to memorize a line.
Yeah, you're not trying to become famous. You're not trying to be the funniest person in the room. That person usually does terrible improv, by the way. But, you just need to be present and feel awkward. If you feel awkward, you're doing it right. You're just there to get a little bit used to freeform expression, being on your feet, give and take of ideas, do the exercises that they do. It will help you appreciate, aspects of what we all do that are so important to your work, to working with other people. And it'll extend not just to pitches, but talking to other artists, talking to the people who work above and under you. It's the best thing you can do. And just remember that if you feel awkward or uncomfortable, that's kind of the point. And just say, hey, I'm here to just kind of exercise this muscle. That's all. And if you do that, you'll find that you really can't be embarrassed. And if you are, you just own it, because so is everyone else, whether they admit it or not. You know,
And
there's nothing worse than false confidence. I think it's better to be vulnerable and confident in your vulnerability than it is to pretend that everything's great and you got it all together. And you know, because then you just sound like you're a TV commercial that's trying to sell something.
wise words.
Yeah, man. I've seen people pitch, because I got a chance to work in development a little bit at one point, and I heard these writers come in and they were saying things that I said and doing things that I used to do, and I thought I was so confident, and I'm like, oh man.
So I was gonna say, what are some good, like I was gonna ask, what are some bad tips that you received throughout the years to pitch, like things you wouldn't you wouldn't recommend, and what are things that you would recommend?
The worst advice I ever got was from an extremely famous producer who I was honored to meet, and creator, and it was a hero of mine, and they meant well, but they were from an older generation where they basically told me kind of fake it till you make it mentality. He was like, never let anybody think you don't have a vision for what you're doing. Make sure everybody looks to you for the answers, because if you don't have them, they're going to go to somebody else, or they're going to lose confidence in you. Which was like, if you look for the part that's positive, it was just like, you know, don't let people walk all over you, or, you know, and I guess, but to me that was counterproductive. What worked for me on a show like Glitch Text was, and encouraging this in other people, was to just allow yourself to be really open and vulnerable, to hear out all ideas. And if you were outside your comfort zone about something, to just own that, just admit that I have a relationship with gaming, and this show is about gaming, and it's a show I'm co-creating, but I don't know everything about gaming and gamer culture. And I don't want to look like an ass because I'm going to make a show that I think will connect with people. That's how you become the most awkward adult at the party, you know. It's horrible. And a lot of creators do that because they're afraid to admit they don't know. So we just surrounded ourselves with consultants. We let our artists talk to us and tell us what they thought. Like, the ideas did not have to come from us.
I just had Chris Byrne in an interview this morning, and he said the exact same thing. And he's been pitching and directing for years, and he's like, it's okay to don't know. Like, don't pretend you know everything. Just take a moment and accept that you don't know all the answers. And I'm really glad that you say the same thing.
Yeah, and you seem like a phony if you pretend to, because nobody has all the answers. Those people don't seem human. We work for people sometimes that like act like they're superhuman, and we know they're not. Whether they're nice or not, usually it's just out of defensiveness or fear. We did an episode about it on Glitch Text in a way, which was to try to be, you know, an open-minded person, open to communication. Our episode Alpha Leader is about a kid who thinks he has to be strong and know everything for the people around him to feel like they're safe and like somebody's in control. But nothing seems less intuitive than somebody who claims to, you know, be a master at everything. So when pitching, I guess that's my advice. Don't even go in and with the concept that you're selling something. We all want people to say yes to us, but the real truth is most often the people we pitch to aren't in a position to say yes. And there are 1,000 reasons they might say no. So go in with your best case scenario, which is, what I want to succeed at is not selling a show. What I want to succeed at is having a good conversation, talking about something that really means a lot to me. And in conveying that to these people, I want to get to know them. And I also want them to hear the kind of stories and ideas I have and I create, because it gives them a small sense of who I might be creatively. If that's your end goal, you'll be surprised that the other stuff actually ends up coming pretty naturally. You know, the show I made, I got because somebody who I'd pitched to like 6 years earlier, who passed on my project, just remembered me as somebody they really enjoyed interacting with. And she specifically was like, hey, you know, Eric Robles, I met this guy a few years ago. I think you'd really like him. I think he'd be great for this thing you're working on, which was not glitch text at the time, but it was something similar. And, you know, that's how we ended up together, Robles and I. So
Yeah, because I was about to say you team up a lot with Eric on a lot of projects, and that's really great. And I think it just shows that you don't have to do everything on your own.
no,
Sometimes
definitely not.
finding a good partner to work with is not easy, but it can be worth it. Oh, I lost you there.
What happened?
I only lost you for a second.
Oh, okay. My window closed, though. That's weird.
It happens.
Oh, okay. Well, so I'll just keep going.
But yeah, the question I asked was because we talked about glitch tech and we talk about pitching, but I know that when you pitch and when you work on ideas, you often team up with your friend and colleague Eric Robles, and I think that just shows how you don't have to do it alone. Finding a good partner is hard, but sometimes it's worth it.
And you'll find many, because I've actually had many creative partners. It started with Sean Baker, who's now a filmmaker. He's done amazing films like The Florida Project and Starlit, and he's just done amazing indies. He and I and our friend Spencer Shenoy, we created Greg the Bunny. Before that, I also was partnered with and still work with sometimes my friend Chris Burgosh, who co-wrote some of the films with Sean Baker, and we made fun videos together in college and really helped each other kind of grow and try things. My friend Matthew Huffman and I wrote several features together, and for so many producers that we developed relationships with. You know, I worked with Seth Green on Robot Chicken and Star Wars Detours, and it's just, you start to build a community, just the way you have a friend community. You start to build a career community as well of friends and collaborators. And Eric Robles and I worked on Monkey Quest. He had already done Fanboy and Chum Chum, so I wasn't part of that production. I came on to Nick as that was finishing, and he was starting new projects. And we pitched that. We pitched Glitch Text. We're working on some new stuff together now. You just find these people that you connect with, just the way you find people in your life through friendships and dating relationships. You just kind of have chemistry. And when you find a good chemistry, you hold on to it.
And can you tell us a little bit about how it was to pitch Glitch Tech? Because I know that at the moment when you pitched the show, I think Nickelodeon was not exactly looking for the next action TV series. They were looking for something more like comedy or something, but I think you kind of tried to transform your idea and adapt it to what they were looking for. So can you take us through that process just a little bit?
Definitely. And we weren't outsiders who went into Nickelodeon to pitch. Eric was already inside Nickelodeon, and he knew a great deal about their politics and the kind of things they were looking for. So if you do have the opportunity to work in the industry, it's great to know as much as you can about the different places that you may develop projects for, you know, by your own experience or through friends and contacts. And so in the case of Eric, he knew that they were not looking for action shows. They had not felt that they had, this is going to sound crazy because we all feel otherwise as viewers, but Nickelodeon did not feel they profited well from Legend of Korra and Avatar: The Last Airbender. A lot of us feel that was their own fault, like that they just didn't market properly or know how. But for whatever reason, they were not looking to do any shows like that anymore, which is ironic because pretty much everyone we knew who came to work there came there because of shows like that. then they focused more on their comedic shows, which
Yeah, but usually
people,
these shows are more expensive than comedic shows, so you know.
yeah, that usually is the big thing at the end of the day. The more a show costs, the more it needs to profit. So the comedies are cheaper and they're also just as successful, especially a show like SpongeBob. And Eric's previous show had been a comedy, but he really wanted to do a supernatural show that would be both comedic and kind of big adventure. And he was smart enough to know that if he just pitched that, it would probably get shot down because it would sound too big. So what he did was, and this is good advice for any show anyway, he worried less about the tone and he focused really just on the characters. He wanted to just focus on two characters whose job it was, their after school job was basically to go door to door as IT repair people for video game consoles. And that sounds pretty small, you know. It just so happens that the cartoon concept is that these glitches come out of the video games and are actual like pests in your home, which made these characters more like exterminators who were there to catch bugs and stuff, right? So now you see why it's fun for animation, and you know why characters who are having their first after school job might be relatable to kids. And Eric's very funny, so there's like just funny dialogue and funny expressions and ideas. So he's just innocently developing this little comedy concept. The studio felt it needed some help in the writing department, and it was a very young idea he developed. So he already knew me, and we got to talking, and I was such a fan of this genre. I brought all these ideas that I had been planning for other projects, and Eric and I just went nuts fleshing it out. But we kept the focus on the comedy, and so it was less of a pitch. Whether Eric was already working at Nick or not, what he does is he sits at his desk and he endlessly draws, and he looks for emotional connections with the things he doodles. Kids, you know, and eventually he just doodled these kids in these uniforms, and he drew a creature coming out of a TV set, and he just put these ideas together to come up with the basic concept for glitch text. And then when you have people around you who encourage that and say, that's a cool drawing, enough times, he sits down and he doesn't wait for a green light. He sits down with his paper and he starts drawing thumbnails. He starts drawing a little story, like what happens if these repair people go to a house and walk in the door and see a video game creature, like how do they deal with it? And he's kind of, just like we talked about improv, you know, he's improvising, he's making it up as he goes, he's discovering ideas, but he's also bringing it to life. So when he does show it to someone, he's not sitting there pitching it to you verbally, he's showing you. And it doesn't matter if you're an experienced artist like Eric Robles or you do chicken scratch like I used to do, it still helps to just, you know, provide people with visual ideas as well as verbal. So I immediately understood what he was going for, and I had so much more I wanted him to consider. And, you know, we had access to people like executives and like the head of the studio, who Russell Hicks at the time was not a purely corporate guy who hid behind closed doors. He was also very creative. He's an artist himself. And he used to walk around and visit artists like Eric and just hang out. So he saw Eric's drawings and he thought, this is something you should pursue. And again, it wasn't a green light. It was just encouragement. Out of all the drawings Eric had, and he had literally hundreds, those repair guys were something that he was encouraged to really follow through on. When it came down to pitching, it was more when executives said, okay guys, this is a cute idea, but how do you, what kind of show would it be? And that's where we had to sort of pitch the idea that there's this company and they have problems with their video games and they hire these kids, and you know what kind of kids they might be. But again, we knew to not put the emphasis on the action. We waited for the encouragement of the studio in telling us to go ahead and now create storyboards on which to create an animatic. they were
So you kind
interested
of
now.
pitched it as a comedy show, and then I
Yeah,
guess the people in the room were like, you know, that will make a pretty good action show, and that's the moment when you say, "Oh yeah, I never thought about that."
it's yeah, that's exactly it. So we knew we wanted more, but once they said do an animatic, that's when we were able to kind of make these moments very big. So when they caught the creatures and when they confronted the creatures, like Eric started putting in really dynamic shots, and sure enough, people see them and say, "Hey, you should go a little further with that." And of course, that was the plan all along, you know. So we knew that we needed to take that slow, you know, and not lead with that idea. To hook them with the characters and the core concept, which is really what any project should do anyway. It should always be about your characters and your world more than anything else. And then we started to turn up the knob on the action with their consent and with their encouragement. And eventually the show got so big, you know, it was too late for them to take it back.
Yep.
Because it became a part of what defined the show. But the point I'm trying to make is it wasn't the defining factor, and it was a way for us to strategically get to yes. So I'm sorry it's such a long answer, but I think it's important people know that it was a slow and organic process of slowly introducing the ideas visually and slowly just turning up the dial on the elements that we wanted to
When
most
pitching, do
convey.
you? Because I have lots of students and fellow artists who are like, yeah, I want to pitch, and I like they want to pitch their ideas, but and sometimes they're gonna prepare for like 6 months, and then I'm like, in 6 months I'm gonna be ready. But what I'm trying to get in their head is that you never know when you're gonna have to pitch your idea,
That's
and
true.
if you want to be a creator, always try to have something ready. And by something ready, I don't mean, like you said, a big presentation with fireworks and stuff.
That's right.
Sometimes I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that when you're trying to pitch, just having that quick elevator pitch going on, kind of can work very well. Because if you have an
Absolutely.
opportunity to pitch in like 3 minutes, you have to be able to kind of get people interested in your idea in like 30 seconds or something.
That's absolutely right. Because it's better to take the drama off of the pitch and not think of it as something that is your big stage show that you're preparing for months and then going to unveil onto the world. To be honest, the executives I've met, none of them spends their day going, I hope I hear a great pitch today, or I can't wait for another pitch. Like the traditional pitch is laden with pressure. There's pressure on the person pitching, and there's usually an air of desperation because you know they worked so hard, they spent months. This is their shot,
It's
and
their
nobody,
baby.
yeah, it's their baby, and nobody considers how much pressure they're putting on the executives. Like nobody wants to sit there and judge your baby and be the make or break meeting for you. Like especially when they know it doesn't really work that way. So it makes everyone uncomfortable and everybody's tense because if they like it, they have to be very careful about how they tell you they like it because they don't want to necessarily make you think you just sold something.
Yeah.
If they don't like it, they want to be very polite and as to why. Hopefully, you get somebody who can give you constructive feedback, but it's rarely even a matter of the quality of your project. The no is usually more of a
And
big
sometimes
picture
it's just
reason.
about the moment, right? Because you can pitch something to Nick, and they're gonna say no. You pitch it to Cartoon Network, they're gonna be yes, and it's the exact same pitch. It's just the moment is also sometimes it's
Yeah,
just not your moment.
yeah. Sometimes they don't have the money. Sometimes they're not looking to make that kind of a show, or they just greenlit that kind of a show. Sometimes it could be any number of things. And so, again, it's a lot of pressure to put not just on you, but on them. So, what is natural, what is much more interesting to do, I think, is to really just have very relatable, fun ideas and concepts that you can talk about ready in the sense that you've taken the time to curate what of your ideas are your favorites, the ones your friends really like talking about, the ones that other people think are really cool and that you should pursue. And whether it's a sketch or a thumbnail or a conversation, it's something you should be prepared to just kind of talk about. Again, the way you would talk about a cool song you just heard or a cool show that, you know, idea, or a cool show you just saw. Like, oh man, last night I was flipping around and I saw this weird thing about these guys who go and they're like tech support, but they're also like exterminators and they catch video game monsters. That's it. And somebody else can say, cool, that sounds awesome.
Then you go on, because you got at least you got the interest of the person. And
yes. And it's disarming. It's just a conversation. It's not, hey, so I had this baby that I've been working on forever and I need you to love. Can I tell you about it real quick? That's like, okay.
Yeah, it's weird. I know when I was working on a indie game, I pitched it to a couple of things. And one way I kind of proved my idea was I would pitch it to randos on the street. Like, I would wait for my coffee at the coffee shop and be like, hey, I have a story to tell. And people were like, who the heck are you?
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
I have a story. And it worked. Like, people getting, I got people interested into a stupid idea. And yeah, so don't be afraid to share your idea. Because I guess if you keep it secret for too long, I mean, you don't get feedback, right?
Exactly. And a lot of people are really afraid that, you know, this idea of theirs is so precious. And if they tell anybody, they risk it being stolen.
Mm-hmm.
You're always going to run into somebody who may have a story, legitimate or not, where that was perceived to have happened or did happen, because I don't want to disrespect anybody. But the truth is, it is extraordinarily rare. What happens more often is that sometimes there are things just in the zeitgeist that are part of the, you know, consciousness of the culture that are similar. There are so many situations where, you know, you might perceive something like that. But at the end of the day, if you're somebody who has ideas and somebody who creates things and somebody who's always doodling, nothing should be so precious that you're afraid to talk about it, because talking about it is how you create a healthy idea. It's like saying, I have a child and I'm so afraid of it being kidnapped that I'm going to just keep it in my room.
It's like Rapunzel.
Yeah, I'm going to keep Rapunzel in a tower until it's time for college or marriage. And it's like, guess what? You're going to get a malnourished kid that nobody wants to go near. No matter how beautiful you think they are. But it's true. If you want your idea to flourish, you have to get it oxygen. You have to give it an education. You have to let it grow up to be well-rounded. And that only happens when the world helps to shape it, not just you, which kind of goes back to what we were saying. Don't do it all yourself. Don't think that it's only about your vision. You have to let this stuff breathe and grow. If you're that protective, what you're really saying is, I only have one idea. And I'm incapable of coming up with any others, so I'm going to smother this kid or this idea. And it's just not going to work out.
Yeah, because we're focusing on pitching today, but like, you've done so much. You've done writing, you've done, you worked on Robot Chicken, you've directed, you've done a lot of things. And at the end of the day, what you just said, where it's if you hide your ideas from the world, what you're sharing is that it's your idea, and you're not kind of willing to collaborate. But for Glitch Tech, I mean, you directed the series. Did you direct the series?
I did. I directed. I didn't direct on. I did all the voice direction on Glitch Tech, but I directed the live action shows, War and the Ape. I directed Crash and Bernstein for Disney XD, and I have not strictly worked as like an animation director, but as an EP, you sort of, you know, you direct your directors. We were very hands-on with visuals and things.
Because that's the
Part
thing.
of that.
If like it's your series, it's your you're the creator, well, co-creator of the series and stuff. But at the end of the day, that series will be in other people's hand, and I think that's something that people don't always consider.
Oh yeah.
Because you're gonna find artists to be your ally in that process, but at the end of the day, it's not a one-man show. It's a crazy teamwork. So you have to be able to give and take and accept that other ideas are also great.
Absolutely. You need to be used to the fact that you're there to share. You're there to share it with your studio. You're there to share it with your crew. You're there to share it with your audience. It's not just yours. If you're selfish at any point about this or overprotective, it's just the enemy of creativity. I mean, we were talking earlier about George Lucas. You know, I think what made the original Star Wars so special is that he had this idea, and everyone forgets that he was only able to achieve like less than a third of it. His idea was so much bigger than that movie. And his concepts were so much bigger than what could be held. He had to completely shave down his ideas to a shorter script based on the input of his friends and his wife, who was his editor. He had to compromise on the visuals. He had to trust all these artisans and people like Ralph McQuarrie to design his world, and everyone at ILM to bring it to life. And he was there to be the filter and to guide it as much as possible. He did not create Star Wars. He didn't. George Lucas did not create Star Wars. George Lucas and all his contemporaries who worked on that film created it. And when it was done, he looked at it and saw a sloppy senior thesis film that was like a fraction of what he wanted it to be. which is why to this day he will revise it to death to try to get it to be, you know, what he always wanted. But we, the audience, who it was shared with, we see the culmination of all those people's work.
Is this what he told you?
No, not in so many words. But also, yes, it is clear from how he spoke about it. You know, it's always about, well, with the limitations and what I had at the time. And it's all about the compromises and what had to be settled for. He didn't, you know, people love how sort of dirty and lived in the world was. Well, if he could have, the floors would have been spotless on the Death Star. Darth Vader would not have had scratches on his helmet. Yes, it was part of his vision that there was some dustiness and grit, but that's also because he was going with what he had. He just shooting in Tunisia with sandstorms. Of course stuff is going to look gritty. You can't not. We didn't have the technology to invent the sets, you know. The robots got dirty, so they're supposed to be dirty, right? But when he made episode 1, everything is shiny and beautiful because CG can do that, right?
At the time, that was what they had.
Yeah, so these compromises help us define what it is. And then working with an artist like Ralph McQuarrie, whose designs are one-to-one what you see in Star Wars. I mean, that's somebody working for George and bringing a vision to him. George is still the guy to say yes or no and to give tremendous amounts of feedback. But you know, without John Williams composing and without, you know, ILM and John Dykstra and people who are bringing their technology to the table, you know, the culmination of that movie wouldn't be there. It would be more like Flash Gordon or something else, you know. So not to take away from Lucas, he definitely had a unique vision that changed so much about how science fiction was being done, and he's such a smart engineer and student of technology and what's possible in film to push all those boundaries. But it came down to these, like, you know, dirty, shirtless, tired, overworked people in garages, you know, toiling to help bring that vision to the screen. So it'll be the same with your production. You will rely on talented people to help you, you know, realize this vision. And you should be open to not just telling them what to do, but also listening to what they think and leaning on their talents. Because if Ralph McQuarrie is an artist who is comfortable with a certain style, don't ask him to go do a completely opposite style. You know, lean into what he's doing. that's how you know he's the artist for you.
And I
And
guess to go back a bit with the pitch, um, um, the pitch guide that I'm writing at the moment. um,
oh, I'd love to take a look at that because I've been wanting to work on a video
oh,
guide, so
it's
maybe
just here.
we could collaborate.
It's on the page.
I have a lot to say about the structure of a pitch and things like that I've learned.
A lot of the time when I work with students and fellow artists that also want to pitch, it's always like they say, oh, I have this cool PowerPoint, this cool Bible, this cool artwork, these cool characters, and I'm like, you know, how do you present it? And then they're like, well, it's the story of like this and the world, and also waffles. And I'm like, you know, you have to kind of work on your people skills, right? Because you're gonna pitch to people, and
Yes.
and I think I'm pretty confident that this is a skill, because when people come to me, they're like, yeah, but you have a YouTube channel, you're so good with people. But I was not born like that, and I don't think you were either.
No.
I guess we kind of learn these kind of skills, and I don't think your first pitches were as good as the last one.
No, one of my first pitches was with my friend Matthew Huffman, and it was for a feature film to Stan Winston, who is the also was an amazing artisan who did so many movie effects, and it was based on something. I had a meet and greet meeting with him where he told me something about his life, and that, you know, when he was a kid, he was very antisocial because he was odd and he liked to play with monsters, and all he did was sit around and draw them and sculpt them. And he said, yeah, growing up, all I had was the monsters. So that stuck in my head, and my friend and I had an idea about a story about a kid and this monster that was his best friend. And we went to pitch it to Stan because we knew it was personal and he was doing some producing. We ended up selling this script, by the way, which is amazing. But the pitch was like 2.5 hours long. We were just talking forever about 1,000 ideas. And he finally had to stop us and say, guys, I just have to stop you because I have to go. Like, this is just way too long.
You broke him.
Yeah. But he said, but you know, I feel so much heart and passion in this, and I love the elements of this story, and I want to talk about it more. So, and we did, and it led to a bunch of things. We ended up setting it up at Sony, and we had a lot of directors involved. It never got made, but it was like a 7-year journey that was pretty amazing. And that was the most awkward pitch I ever had because, again, we were just walls of sound, babbling and babbling. It could have been a 20-minute discussion of the basic idea. And over the years, I've just kind of learned to listen and stop talking and be present and mindful and just have a conversation with somebody, because that's how the idea started. But I was so desperate, you know, I let it take over. And you have to try and fail just like anything else a few times before you really figure it out, and be willing to pitch to, you know, friends and other people and kind of practice.
And I guess you have to rotate that pitch crew too, because if you always pitch to the same people, they kind of get used to who you are and how you talk. So I guess you have to kind of try to rotate your public as well.
Yeah, that's true. So that, yeah, you're always, what you did is so smart, just kind of pitching to strangers because they don't know you or have preconceived notions. And it is literally the same as what I've been saying is it's like stopping somebody at Starbucks and saying, oh, hey, did you see this show last night? Or did you see this movie? It's called Queen's Gambit on Netflix. It's about this girl she's an orphan. And, you know, and you're just, it's not yours, so you're not as nervous. You're just one person conveying to someone else very quickly something cool you saw.
Because at the end of the day, I guess people will not always have... they don't know what your story is. But at the end of the day, maybe you're going to have like 3 friends who are going to be like, oh, we have a show to watch tonight. What are we watching? And all that they're going to have is... maybe if you're lucky, a poster and
Yes.
a brief description of your show. And if your brief description cannot get them hooked, they're gonna maybe watch something else. So I mean, that's why I was like, if I can get a stranger's attention of my idea, I guess I can get bigger person's attention.
Yes, if I can put a picture in their mind, and if I can convey a feeling, and I can succeed at that, then that's really what it's about. Because that's all you need to start a larger creative conversation. It's just something that lets them, you know, see an element of it in their mind and maybe feel a feeling that is a positive feeling that they want to feel, or something that they want to hear more about. So you're not there to tell them everything like I tried to do. You're there to encourage them to want to hear more, which can happen at any stage, you know?
And just to conclude, because we're almost done. Oh my god. It's the holiday time, so it's kind of time to give back to people, and I think that's what we've been doing for the past hour with making our beautiful guide here. um, but it's the holiday time, so I would like to ask, do you have any good suggestions of books or easily accessible material that people can find either on the internet, at their library or something? You know, good books, good documentaries you've seen that could help them in their creative process, either from scripting, animation, or just pitching stuff.
Absolutely. I want people to know that before I went into show running and co-creating Glitch Text, you know, I'd already done several productions, but this is my first like true show running job. And it doesn't matter how many years experience, I know Eric Robles feels the same. We're all learning, and we're all kind of, you should still have the mentality of almost still starting out. And I obsessed over podcasts, and I Googled articles about show running, about writing, about animation, and you know, I didn't act like I knew every damn thing. I was terrified, and listening to those people talk just kind of started to fill me, not with confidence, but it just didn't feel so alone. And what I was listening to was the Nerdist Writers Podcast, which has such a huge body of work that you can actually kind of search for topics and find episodes where you'll hear, you know, groups of writers, you'll hear writers' assistants, you'll hear producers, actors, people talking about their craft. And it doesn't matter, remember everybody, it doesn't matter, you don't have to listen to an animation podcast just because you're doing animation. You can listen to live action, animation, features. It doesn't matter. The job is really the same. Listen to all of it, and just what you want to do is just take out of it what means something to you. Because I very often would listen to live action podcasts and apply it to animation, and the opposite. So widen your search and look for stuff like that. Nerdist Writers Podcast, Script Notes Podcast is fantastic about writing. I don't think they're still doing it, unfortunately, but the Nickelodeon Animation Podcast talked to so many amazing show creators. There are amazing YouTube channels, like one of my favorites is, oh God, what's it called? Defunct Land, DEFUNCT. Defunct Land used to focus mostly on old theme park attractions and would do documentaries about how they came to be. But they've also started doing animated films and television shows, and they do such in-depth coverage. So look on YouTube for as many sources as you can on animation history and your favorite shows and movies. When it comes to books, again, this is really for writers. There's a very silly book with a tremendous amount of positive information. It's called How to Write Movies for Fun and Profit, but fun is crossed out.
Oh yeah, I saw that cover somewhere.
Yeah, it's like an unfortunate cover, and it's written by the guys who created Reno 911, and they were part of the comedy troupe The State. They've also written features like you're not going to care about a lot of these features, but they wrote like The Love Bug and Night at the Museum, but the point is that they were working screenwriters in Hollywood who for many years were successful at pitching, taking notes, getting jobs, dealing with the horrible sometimes politics that came with jobs. And I nearly cried when I read this book because no one at my school prepared me for the industry. Nobody gave me any sense of what to expect from writing for features or television. But that book was the only one I ever read that talked about the day-to-day realities. And within the silliness of the book is great advice about how to pitch and what kind of a positive attitude to have, how to represent yourself as a writer. And even though that book's about writing, it will also translate to you as an artist pitching a concept, So these things are worth reading, even if it's not your exact career. I think that's probably the most I would recommend right now. A solid book about writing structure is Save the Cat. A lot of people use that. I also love the Dan Harmon Story Circle, which you can Google online. We use that for our show Glitch Text. And that's pretty much it. The Animator's Survival Kit is also a pretty amazing source for anybody, and I think you guys already know that. And there's now an amazing app as well that's just phenomenal. And those books all touch not just on there's lessons rather about how to convey emotion in images and that. I think it also corresponds to how we talk about animation, but I'm kind of reaching there. It may not be as apparent for newcomers, but at the end of the day, whether you're having a quick little pitch or whether you're producing like a really big animatic, what you're trying to do is make somebody feel something or see the potential in something. In
Wise
you,
words.
in your idea.
Wise words.
So just worry about that. Don't pitch your project, pitch the potential. And be confident that you're good enough. If you're good enough to tell somebody about a cool thing you saw last night, you're good enough to tell somebody about your idea.
Wow.
And
put it like that, it's wow. That's a really nice way to put it. And
yeah, because so many people are intimidated and think, well, who am I? And it makes them feel vulnerable. But the answer is you're you. And, you don't know that because you've been alone with yourself, but you're unique and you have a right, and there are people who have a desire. They want to hear you. And they don't need you to be like crazy confident. In fact, they will be suspicious of that. They just want you to be a cool person who does. The only power you need is the power to just be willing to stand up and put yourself out there.
And as final words, that's another thing I like to ask to everyone who come on my channel for this year is without being health professional, maybe we can give some tips, because usually artists and artsy people, we tend to be sensitive, and sometimes we go through these big period of like lack of motivation and just rough passes and stuff. So do you have any quick tips on how you deal with those kind of things? Because I know that when I'm having these kind of moments, I have to remind myself to go out, take a walk, go outside, do something else. And yeah, so do you have any tips on how you deal with rough passes like that, lack of motivation and stuff?
Yeah, we have to give ourselves a break sometimes, a lot of times, because we can't always do the daily journal. When you do, remember, it's okay to doodle, it's okay to chicken scratch, it's okay to do stuff that doesn't make sense or come together, first of all. And it's just as valid as something that you sit back and are proud of. No sketchbook is a work of art. It should be the opposite. And also, you do have to get up and walk away. We need oxygen. Even if we have a mask on, we need to go out, and sun has to touch our skin. I know none of us want that. We all want to be in a dark cubicle. But we do need the nourishment. Our brain needs it. Walking around the block is great. Just sitting with my dog. Sometimes my dog has become a therapy dog. I just need to hug it sometimes to just get my shit together. Pardon my language. This little lizard I've adopted, I'll just sit with it for a while. And, we got to be good to ourselves and not put so much pressure, because if we're not mentally healthy, we can't produce. And this year I've I've felt a lot of emotional stress and a lot of anxiety, and it's been really hard. I've had to resist having things that I know, give me a bad reaction. I've had to try to like limit my sugar and my caffeine and all those things that, I used to rely on in some ways, and to move my body and get out in the sun. Um, yeah, and to reach out even when you're hurting and connect with other people. I've been saved this year by, talking with friends and interacting with people online and jumping into Discord with, fans of our show and going online and playing online board games with my friends. Um, you're still working when you're not working. You need to be confident in that. Creative minds are always working, and sometimes they just soak things up like a sponge and it'll all come out when you're ready. So if you're feeling a block, you just have to kind of go through it and listen to your brain and your body if it doesn't want to work sometimes.
Thank you so much. These are really, really good advice. And yeah, get a dog. It helps.
Yeah, for sure. Pets really, really help. And if you can't get a pet, then honestly, just go outside and look for animals and watch them. I spent a lot of time with a bird that always sits on a for rent sign on my corner, and he's always there. And one day he won't be, and that'll be sad. Or she. That bird's enough for me sometimes. So get it where you can get it, people, and definitely reach out in your community. I think what's been a last thing I really want to say is, I'll tell you if I'm not feeling well. We don't know each other very long, but we respect each other, and I feel totally willing to confide in you if I'm not having a good day, and that makes me feel closer to you, and I know you understand. Guys, I haven't been on Twitter for a while. I haven't been feeling great. I need to step back. And I got such positive responses from people, and you realize they're going through the same thing.
Yep.
So
we're not alone.
Reach out, for sure. And even if it's just with a simple sentence to say, hey, not great today. Because yes, you're not alone. So anyway, I appreciate anybody who spent time listening, and to you for creating this. It's like you're very unique, and I think you are important to so many people, and so thank you so much for creating this experience. It's so great to be part of.
No problem. I just thought it would be useful to people, and I think it's a gift that is easy to give to people without sending it by mail and having it be complicated and stuff. It's just, knowledge is one of the purest gifts you can give to people. It's like time and knowledge, so I'm really glad that you accepted to come. And
I wouldn't miss it. I'll be at any party you throw.
Nice. Well, thank you, and thank you for all these pitch tips and all this knowledge, and I'm excited for next time.
Thank you very much. I'm at Dan Milano on Twitter. My DMs are open. I've been slower to respond lately, but I am looking to interact with people if they have questions and whatnot. You can find Glitch Text on Netflix. You can find Greg the Bunny on